Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Today I wanted to bring you a simple activity that you can do at home. This is an activity that we do at the Norton Art Gallery that is on observations and analogies. Today our book that is going to relate to today's activity is brought to you by Louis Ehlert called Planting a Rainbow. I'd recommend reading this book with any of your young ones. The basic idea of the book is that you plant bulbs, plant some seeds. As they are sowed into the ground and you watch them grow, there's different foliage or flowers that grow up on them. And then of course at the end, when you have this array of plants that have grown, you look at them and you think, that reminds me of a rainbow. And so this is where it's going to kick off with the idea about analogies. What does something remind you of? And so today we're going to talk about a painting to make a broader connection that I'm going to show now. I want you to take a few seconds and look at the painting and make some observations. The observations we usually like to ask, or guiding questions we like to ask to our patrons are, what do you see? What do you think is happening, or what is going on? And of course, what more can you find? The last bit we would also like to ask sometimes is there a story that might be happening with this painting? And so if you take a look at the painting, I'm going to go through real quick on some of the observations that I made. First, we notice that there are waves, there are rocks, there is a cliff. In the background, it looks like there might be a building that's back there. And of course, there's a slight rainbow that is being shown in the image. And from there you can ask the questions about why do you think they're waves, and then of course you go down through that series of questions because I see white and it looks like that the water is very choppy, which leads me to believe that there are waves there, and so forth. And of course you can go through with the questioning of what's happening here, what's going on, and then what's the story that might be related to that. But I want to focus in a little bit on that rainbow aspect of it. As you can guess, that it kind of goes along with planting a rainbow. And before we go into doing the activity, I wanted to bring up a sheet that I'd like to encourage you to do with the kids. And I'll pop that sheet up here now. It's called Observation and Analogies. And this is something that you can do with your kids when they are looking at any particular object. And so this is great for science. Of course, this leads into ELA. But basically, the idea goes into look at an object that we're going to investigate and then describe that object. And so how can we describe the objects that we're looking at? And so this is something that we need to practice with our kids, and so they can develop these skills. And the first thing you might ask is, well, what color is it? What about the shape, the size, the texture? And of course, as they start describing it, you might ask them, well, what does the color remind you of? Or what does the shape look like to you? The size is something that I like to walk well with the kids, because the size is something that you might want to compare. So it is the size of a penny, or it is the size of a jar. And so no matter what the object is, you want to ask them to kind of go through and talk about what their observations are, and of course communicate that with you. Then in the worksheet, what we ask them to do is kind of draw the object itself. So it's a little bit of art that goes on here, and trying to get them to practice what is it they see and get it onto a sheet of paper or something so that they can illustrate it. And so we ask the students that come here, no matter what it is that they're looking at, to draw the full object as best as they can. And then of course we also ask them in the next box is to kind of draw a detail of it. So for example, if I happen to be looking at this petunia flower, I would look at it and draw the outline and kind of look to see that there are a lot of little veins or lines that are growing in there. Then I might ask and notice that there is something in the center, and so that might be what I'm going to zoom in on and try to draw in more detail as best as possible. Once we're done with that and gotten our drawings done, Then I want us to go down to the bottom, and of course we want to look at some analogies. They've kind of practiced it at the top with looking at the color, the shape, the size, the texture, and then writing what the color or size might remind them of. But down at the bottom, this is kind of open-ended. And so this is what we're asking them to do, is look at what else does it remind you of? What are some more analogies that you can make? And so at the end of this, you have a total of 9 analogies that they've made, 5 at the bottom plus the 4 at the top. This is a very simple kind of activity they can do with anything that they're making observations with. And of course, last week we had talked about color mixing. So we took some jars, added red, yellow, and of course you added some blue food coloring, which I'm going to do now to this one. And we asked them to make some observations about the colors, and then we mixed the colors. What would happen if you mixed some blue food coloring and some yellow? What would you get? And of course the kids said, or noticed that there's a mixture of those 2 colors and got the green. And of course we went through with the yellow and blue, and then of course the yellow and red. Well, this week, since we're talking about flowers, what I decided to do with the kids is that you can take that same activity and then grab some white flowers. This just happens to be a petunia that I got out of my garden. I cut, snipped, and of course you can see the veins that are already there, but what do you think would happen if you took the flower and you placed it inside of the blue liquid, or you placed it inside of the red liquid, or whatever color liquid that you came up with, and let them sit for about 24 hours? Do you think that this food coloring might be absorbed into the plant? This is a great observation that they can make, and of course you can pair it well with that worksheet that that we went over earlier. We do hope that you enjoyed this activity. Please subscribe and come back and watch us later. Thank you.